your name, honey?
Flight Officer Garrett. I'm a flight mechanic and a pilot.
Ain't no women in the Air Corps.
My mission is classified. That's all you need to know.
So Roseanne, for the most part in the film, we have one character in this one very small location. And, you know, often you could have gone, you know, I'm doing an action film. I want lots of sets, lots of characters, lots of every, you know, go big. And you went for that one space and that one character. Can you tell me what attracted you in that way of telling the story?
On a pure creative level, what I loved about it was it really put the audience inside the head of Flight Officer Maude Garrett. That was kind of what I wanted to do with the whole movie, was to be very clear about point of view and make sure that the audience was with her, experiencing what she was experiencing, but also teasing out the mystery of what was happening, that she sometimes wasn't the most reliable protagonist, that she did lie, that she did, you know, have very crazy ideas that weren't the best idea. But the whole point of us staying with her, just one character, allowed us to sort of sit in her point of view and really feel what she was feeling, so that when things did go crazy, we were always with her. And also practically, this is my first Hollywood feature film, so I do not have the resources to go big for the whole movie because it's costly. So I felt that this was a really interesting first Hollywood genre movie to do on the budget that was available to someone like me.
What did this choice meant in terms of the filming itself? Because like even just like what you had in terms of the set, what you build that little space for her and how you use, because then you also have to keep the audience engaged in that one person and that one space. So what did you do in terms of camera and sound to make that exciting? Like just the decisions that came with that big decision of putting her in that place.
It was a scary kind of leap of faith, I think, because we had producers worry that the first 40 minutes of the movie would be very boring. And it would have been without the right actress, without the right, production design, without the right camera. So all those things, I guess, came together. So Chloë and I worked really hard together on making sure that her through line and her logic was always there. We made sure that what she was saying was sometimes at odds with what she was doing. And I find that really interesting to watch. Like, because we were just on her all the time, you could see all the negotiations that she was having with herself, all the navigations that she had to with the voices in her ears. And I think that she did an incredible job of keeping us on the hook, keeping us constantly interested with her performance. It was a very technical challenge. 2 weeks we shot the first 40 minutes of the movie in this tiny ball. We wanted to, I guess, give it that visceral realness to it, in that we built it mechanically so that when she turned the controls, the ball would move hydraulically in a manner that was faithful to the history of the actual mechanics of the Sperry turret. And she was actually claustrophobic, like she's actually genuinely claustrophobic. And so we had to put in safety measures so that there was never, all the sides were not always on. She always had an exit. The exit was not an easy exit. Like if she had to exit, she would have had to jump. It was a ball on a metal sort of stand, and she had to climb stairs to get into the turret and go downstairs to get out of it. But if she, for instance, if the claustrophobia had got the better of her and she had to jump out of the ball, it would have been a long way for her to go. So that was a technical issue that she managed mentally, and we were always checking in with her through our team and making sure that she felt safe through that process. The men were live. The actors who were in her ears were live. They were through sound. They were outside in the car park. So we were on set, and the men were in makeshift shipping container outside. And so everything they said she could hear, but she could, but when she took off her headphones, she couldn't hear them anymore. And I designed it that way so that her reactions would always be organic, and that she'd always feel like she never knew what was coming next. And sometimes with her permission and the permission of the male actors outside in the car park, I'd sometimes ask them to improvise so that we got that real sense of kind of riffing and banter and working on the fly. And I think, again, that really adds to the kind of energy of the first 40 minutes.
One of the things I thought was interesting is that it takes place in the 40s, but there's a real 80s feel to it in the sound and the looks. Can you talk a little bit about that, just the style that you created there for the film?
I'm not really a World War II person. I studied it at school, and I've watched World War II movies, but I would never have picked myself to make a World War II movie until I read this one. I think because it felt so of the time. It felt like it said something about where we are now as a society. It felt perennial. It felt kind of urgent as well when I read it. This was in 2018 when I first read it, so it was Me Too had just happened, and I felt like this was a script that really connected with me in a way that didn't feel too on the nose. But I wanted to make a World War II movie that sort of honoured that modern feeling to it. And so the 80s kind of synth soundtrack was something that came to me very early in the piece, actually, when I was pitching to earn the directorship of this movie. I already knew that I wanted an unusual soundtrack, because all the World War II movies that I could remember were made with very traditional orchestral scores. And what I love about synth is that it can feel epic and expansive, but still have this element of fun and playfulness. And that was something that also appealed to me about the movie, is its sort of pulpiness. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It talks about serious things, but sometimes I find that the best way to deliver meaning or social resonance is through genre. We're seeing a profusion of genre movies that try and deliver meaning in amongst the fun and the entertainment, and I wanted the same for this movie.
Can we talk about the creature? I think that's important to talk about the gremlin.
Yeah.
How did you? I know you worked with Weta on it here in New Zealand. So how did you guys get to that creature?
When we went deep into the history of it, we found this history of the gremlins. They are a thing that Air Force pilots talk about that is part of the history. If anything went wrong, they'd just jokingly blame a gremlin, and they'd start using gremlins as their mascots for, just as a fun thing to do. But then pilots started swearing that they actually saw real gremlins, and we found drawings of a gremlin from an Air Force pilot that had this funny bat-like kind of feel to it. So the more we explored the lore of gremlins from the history, the more we informed our, I guess, rigor when we approached the biological aspects of this creature that we were making. So Weta Digital were very excited that, they'd done a bunch of apes, they've done some dragons. They wanted to do something new on a budget that of a scale that they hadn't worked before. Normally they have a really large budget. We had a lot of fun. We first looked at bats because that was the first kind of visual reference that we had from the history. And then we started going into undersea creatures. I was excited by hagfish. We started looking at crocodiles and sort of the mating idiosyncrasies of animals. A crocodile kind of does this high frequency vibration. So that's something that's come through in the gremlin. And I think what we liked about the biology of the gremlin and its kind of character was that it's completely unpredictable. it's unpredictable in the way that a wild animal is unpredictable, you know, and so we found that very kind of creepy and dangerous, and we wanted to lean into that unpredictable wild animal nature of it.
There was an original script that was written by Max Landis that you rewrote it, and you both shared the screen credit, but the screenwriting credit, but you didn't work together. I know he left the project very early. But I was just wondering if you could tell me more or less what kind of rewrites did you do? Like what kind of elements did you wanted to bring that weren't there yet?
To me, it was a deepening and streamlining and taking what was something that was quite shallow, for instance, and deepening its meaning, deepening its logic. Even the men, that there were 7 men, I know they're supposed to operate as a wolf pack, but in the first script that I received, they kind of sounded like the same person. We considered taking out some men, but then the historical, they had crews of up to 10 people on the ship because they need a guy on each part of the ship. So we kind of had to have all the guys. Then I started working on, with the producers actually, they really wanted this to happen too, but each of the men is very distinct within the wolf pack. The ending was slightly different. Well, I mean, quite different. I received quite a short script, so I had to kind of string out action design, for instance. The sequence where she breaks her finger was much shorter, and I put a lot more kind of fight logic into there. So yeah, I mean, what I received was a very interesting kind of blueprint, but it needed some strengthening and complication to it.
And I've read many interviews in which you said that you want to be an action director, you love genre filmmaking, this is what you love. And this work that I do with women in film my interest in that started very much connected to Catherine Bigelow, because I watched The Hurt Locker and I loved it, and that was when she was nominated to the Oscars. So that's when I was reading about her that I found out about how unequal, you know, film is. And one thing about Catherine Bigelow that always calls my attention is that I remember reading this back in the day when she was nominated, but I often hear that when I teach classes about her, things like that, just conversations, some people get very frustrated that she was the one to win the Oscar because her movie is a war movie and it's an action movie and it's about men. So they say, you know, the one woman that was recognized by a movie that is typically a male movie. So really, if it had been, you know, the lives of women, she wouldn't have been, you know, awarded. And I understand the point of this, that yes, there are the things that are perceived as male are often more, you know, valued in the industry and in society. But then I always think about something that I think Catherine Bigelow, the first time I saw her saying that was probably the 90s when she said, you know, why is this perceived as male? Why is action perceived as male? Why is genre filmmaking perceived as male? And then your film made me think about this because you have a woman actress and you talk about, you know, sexism or, you know, in some ways there with the Wolfpack. And it's very likely that some people will perceive your film as female, you know, like, it's a woman actress lead, so it's for women, you know. So I just like to know your opinion about this whole thing of action and gender. Is it a genderless genre, or do you agree with this female male kind of labels that are given to the films?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a sophisticated complicated question to unpack, and I love it, and I love thinking about it because I can absolutely see what you mean. I grew up watching movies with men in them, so Indiana Jones, Die Hard, The Matrix. You know, I watch these movies and I don't see them as male. I mean, this whole gendering of movies is probably just as, I guess, rigid as gender bias itself, gender binaryism is itself in the real world. I see myself in these action movies, and I've always loved action movies, and I never thought about that. The same goes with Terminator 2 and Alien, female protagonists, but I don't see them as female movies either. I mean, yes, there is the mother aspect of it, but I believe that men can understand the rage and the rage of a mother, or the well of strength that a mother can access. In the same way that our society is non-binary, that on the one side of the coin is feminism and women accessing equality. On the other side is masculinity and men accessing vulnerability and understanding emotions. And I think the two are interconnected. If we accept that we can't be rigid with binary gender in our social world, then we need to accept that the stories that we tell are not binary either. It's a very kind of rigid and stale way of thinking about movies.
You had a small budget doing this. This is also true about Catherine Bigelow, for example. She often had small budgets for her action films. And it's true for so many female filmmakers. You know, there's quotes from the 20s where there's a studio head saying that it's too risky to give a big budget in the hands of a female director. And then there's a lot of things that you hear, you know, people saying, but women are so good at you know, stretching the budget and dealing with these conditions. And maybe they don't even want the big budgets because they love so good. So I was just wondering if you could tell us, what is the importance of you know, accessing those resources, and how would you like to have all the tools and all the toys?
To me, it's just a natural progression of a filmmaker, whether I'm a woman or not. I guess I'm lucky in that I haven't experienced that discrimination. I've never been able to compare myself to a contemporary who's in my situation and then being able to draw a direct line between them accessing more budgets than me. I think my I guess opportunities since I signed with Hollywood representation of an action short film, like a 12-minute movie, has allowed me to make this movie, and this movie will hopefully allow me to access bigger budgets. I understand why investors are nervous. I understand the system, and it's my job to convince the people with the money that I can be trusted with those budgets. Of course, I'm going to have to take steps, you know, but there's no doubt in my mind that I will get there. I have to do the best job that I can to win myself the next step up. And if I fail on this step, then I will not be able to access, there's a chance I may not be able to access that next step. And there is, you know, lots of examples, I think, out in the real world where men have maybe failed, but still been given more chances, and women have failed and not been given those chances because of the perception that, they burnt out, or they couldn't handle it, or whatever, you know. I mean, the fact is that I have a very strong set of representatives, and I have a good network around me who understand my worth, and their belief in my worth has fueled my own belief in my worth. You know, I'm a strong action filmmaker because I have an understanding of action design. You know, I'm good at VFX because I have a computer science degree, you know, and these are things that I feel embarrassed keeping on saying. But if anyone ever questions whether or not I'm capable of doing these things, I always bring back, well, here's my track record. Yes, occasionally I will have to prove my worth and convince someone that I can be trusted with certain things. But I think men have to do that too. Or I would hope that men have to do that too. But I'm not in those meetings, so I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know what prejudices I've experienced, because I'm just trying to be the best filmmaker that I can be. Yeah.
You are a Chinese Kiwi. So yes. Do you see more opportunities for Asian talent? And also, do you see the interest of the audience? Do you feel the audience is quite excited about these stories?
I'm excited when we have role models like Chloe Zhao and John M. Chu making these amazing movies that are successful. That's always really important, because I don't think we've ever had, not ever, but we've had very few, and to have more of them and a myriad of them is very important for the people coming up. Is it important? Yes, because anti-Asian sentiment is spreading across the globe. Like it's certainly in America. There's been a rise in hate crimes against Asians, and we're getting it here in New Zealand as well. So it's really important that we are in the media more than we have been. For a long time, we've been the model minority, keep your head down, don't say anything. But now we have to say something. Now we have to be present. Now people have to accept that we are part of this society, because we're out there in the streets, but we're not on our screens. So I think that's something that's really important.
Skies safe.
Welcome back to the party, baby.